Welcome back to the Creating One podcast. And the topic today is the real versus the ideal and our expectations going into relationships versus what we are willing to do to set aside those expectations and deal with the reality that we are in a relationship with someone who we didn't come out of the womb with. And so we have to learn to reach each other if reaching each other is possible. And if we are getting married, how to coexist and compromise. And the premise behind this podcast is based on a relationship birthed in reality television, Iyanna and Jarrette from Love is Blind season 2. I'm not going to talk about a lot of the show because this podcast doesn't need to be 30 minutes of rehashed information. If you want to check out the show and specifically after the show content, I'll link it for your perusal. However, the focus of this podcast is on what we see love or imagine love to be and then the reality of what it is. For many people who watch the show, they believe that Iyanna should not have selected Jarrette because there is much about the show she didn't get a chance to see until after the show wrapped and after she got married, or based upon perhaps what she may have heard in whispers or whatever around the pod. However, there was some information that was made known to her, and she elected to proceed. And people are questioning why she proceeded in marrying him when she wasn't his first choice. So I first want to address that. You are never likely going to be someone's first choice unless you gave birth to them or you are their father. And what I mean by that is a little boy, a grown man, his first choice, who he iconically cherishes as wife potential, is birthed out of the concept, the construct of his relationship with his mother. It literally mirrors it, parrots it, or it, um, whatever it is he doesn't get, he seeks to find that in his wife. And for a little girl, her first love is her father or her image of what her father is. And she tends to seek a mate who is the ideal version of him, of what she thinks her father is. And both Iyanna and Jarrette, in different forums, express some traumas that they both experienced as children, their disconnects from their parents. So you're talking about two individuals who are potentially entering into the world as young adults, trying to recover for the loss or the absence of healthy relationships that they did not get. When they came to the show, they knew the premise of the show that they were going to get married, and they come to the show with the expectation that they know they're going to get married. So I didn't interview them for the show. I didn't select them for the show. And very often, reality TV, especially when they're trying to fight for it to get subsequent seasons, they will do a lot of manipulation to make sure that they get the people that they want on the show and then try to manipulate them and pull strings behind the scene. However, that may be, it's a contract that you undersigned, and you can't blame the show for why your relationship didn't succeed. Because at the end of the day, the relationship is the two of you who decided to get married. Before you decide to cross the altar to get married, you need to understand that you don't decide to be a wife or a husband after you say, I do. And when I say that, I'm saying you don't start making the movement and the adjustments in your life once you get into a marriage, or you decide that this person has to earn your respect for you to start shape shifting yourself into their ideal of a husband. That's not how it works. Before you get married, you need to have a concept, of course, of what you want marriage to look like. But you need to have done the individual work that you need to do to prepare yourself to be able to cohabit and to be able to have conversations, healthy debates, healthy conversations with your spouse that do not result in you desiring to divorce. I am certain, all I want to believe, that Iyanna and Jarrette did all the work that they could in the year that they were married. However, the thing that I believe made the previous season couple, Cameron and Lauren, successful is that even though Cameron was very well intentioned, obviously raised by two very good parents for all intents and purposes, he had to get Lauren on board, which was very obvious. And how he was able to do that was by being consistently walking in his truth. And what Lauren did, knowing that she had some discomforts in just moving straight in with him, she committed to moving in with him, but she also maintained her apartment just in case things went to the left. That is a woman who was forward thinking. And she gradually transitioned herself into full time. And that's realistic. Because what you're doing is that you're recognizing that you don't know this person. And this is not an arranged marriage that you are stuck in due to culture and traditions and values, but you have undersigned a contract to try to make it work. And I applaud them for trying to make it work. And they look to be a very successful relationship. I think they have like 3 or 4 years in. They have moved into another home together. They have built a business and a brand within themselves. They purchased studio space. So they are doing what they need to do to make their relationship work. Everybody assumes that Jarrette and Iyanna fails because of his first choice being Mallory and his apparent edits that showed he was still connected some way emotionally to Mallory. And then when he saw her, she clearly blew his mind away. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of that did play into why I'm guessing Iyanna saw the aftertakes and the subsequent replays of the show that it might have gotten her spirit, plus people clapping back on social media and telling her she's not his first choice, et cetera, et cetera. Because even Jarrette made mention of that in a podcast that he had advised her to stay away from all of that. And maybe that was a part of the problem. However, Jarrette's ideal of a marriage clearly doesn't bode well with what her ideal is of marriage. And going out and staying out until 7 o'clock in the morning is just unacceptable. Now, I don't care who you are, I don't care how you were raised, but that's how people end up becoming hashtag. If you're not at work and you're not doing something productive that's going to bring money into the house to feed your family, you should not be out all hours of the night. You can reserve that time to go on vacation. When you go on vacation, you spend time at your resort or in your Airbnb or on your cruise or whatever you do, and then you get to stay out and be out all night or whatever, and hopefully in a safe and confined space. But when you're married and you have a wife at home or a spouse or a husband or whatever, you should not be out at all kinds of hours of the night and in the morning. You should be at home. If you need to spend that kind of time multiple times a week away from your spouse, you shouldn't be married. And if space is what you need to gradually grow into this marriage, you should find something more productive to do with your time. How about taking up an extra job or doing something like working out? You got 24-hour fitness centers, or perhaps someone deciding to get another apartment and transition into full-time cohabiting. And maybe that's possibly what he was using that time away from her in doing. However, I'm very sad to see them break up because I feel like A lot of the reasons why relationships fail and they end up in divorce is because people aren't willing to do the work. They're not willing to, they're literally fighting to hold on to their freedom when marriage is about two people becoming one and being on board with the ideas that may not necessarily you agree with, but you can see the possibility because you at least respect and understand the perspective of which the person is coming from. There's just no justification, as far as I am concerned, and what it seems to be the majority of women concerned, of a man staying out till 7 o'clock in the morning, multiple times of the week. Relationships require work, but they need two people, 20 toes in and down, fighting for this thing. Sometimes we come into marriage with these preconceived notions that we'll do all that when we get married. This is how men end up waking up to the idea of getting married when they look at their age, they look at their friends. Okay, I'll get married. And that's going to be the woman who stands the closest to them. And I hope that's not the case with Jarrette, because that's going to make for a disastrous situation by law of average. Women think a lot more about marriage. Now, they may not always have realistic expectations, but women prepare themselves very often, more often than not, than men, by how they move in their life. They tend to be a little bit more responsible when handling their finances and how they organize their life and take care of their home. Now, a man who is looking at a woman to marry, because I ran across this image on Facebook the other day, and there was a woman sitting up on her phone in a chair, and the house is dirty and it's in total disarray. And the question is, should a man who works 12 hours a day come home to this and be excused to cheat? Absolutely not, because if this isn't an arranged marriage, you pretty much got a chance to visit this woman. You saw this woman, how she keeps house, whatever. So no, you don't have permission to cheat. You thought she was going to what? Change? People typically don't change who they are. Marriage, just more or less like any other large stage, just amplifies who you really are. So no, you don't get to cheat. What you do get to do is you either pick up the house or you leave. Because staying in a relationship and creating disharmony with someone who you accepted them for these habits that they have is unfair. You don't find a woman in the red light district special area of the town and try to bring her home and convert her into a princess. It just doesn't work that way. And there's still a significant amount of men who are trying to pull women off of poles and turn them into housewives. And then there are a lot of women who um, marry men for their potential can be as well. And I've seen it happen enough, and there's enough receipts out there to show that people, they fall in love or become infatuated with this ideal person instead of the reality of what they see. So I don't want to make this podcast long, but I want to make sure that when you decide or have this ideal preconceived notion about having marriage, having family, you need to prepare yourself. Become the bride you want to be. Become the husband you want to be before you get married. Learn how to condition yourself and have the premise that you're going to go into this successfully. You don't wait until you get married and then start trying to change and mold yourself into this person's ideal. You should already know and understand that that's unacceptable behavior. You ask anyone. Don't ask your friends. Do not ask your boys, because they are probably promoting this debaucherous lifestyle with you and telling you you shouldn't be getting married anyway. They're cheering for you if you get you a baddie. But baddies, very often, sometimes, just like anyone else, things change. Marry someone who has a heart for God, who is spiritually aligned with the premise of God. And you're not going to get that unless you know who you are in order to match the person that you want to marry.